The day my family fed me to an SSS-rank dungeon, my brother asked whether I wanted flowers at my funeral. I told Caleb to bring lilies, they would match his face when he realized I had survived. He laughed because everyone laughed at Ethan, the youngest son of the strongest hunter family in the country. My father Graham could split a mountain with one swing of mana. Caleb could turn sunlight into blades. My sister Harper could control razor-thin threads across an entire battlefield. And me, I had the mana capacity of a damp sock. That was the official diagnosis anyway. Every crystal said my mana channels were empty. Every instructor called them crippled. Every family guest looked at me like I was a stain on a heroic bloodline. I could not strengthen my body, summon a weapon, or activate even the cheapest storage ring. So while Caleb trained in private arenas and Harper studied elite dungeon tactics, I carried their gear, cleaned monster blood from the floor, and listened. That last part mattered. People say cruel things when they think the weak person in the room is furniture. I learned which relatives stole dungeon loot. I learned which instructors lied about casualty counts. I learned where Graham hid forbidden cores. Most of all, I learned that talented people hated reading instructions. I loved instructions. By 19, I knew more about dungeon structures than half the hunters who mocked me. I could identify a trap from the direction dust leaned. I could tell whether a boss room had a second entrance by tapping the wall with a spoon. I once saved Caleb from a poison corridor by throwing his expensive sword at a ceiling valve. He complained about the sword. He never thanked me for his lungs. Then the Devouring Cathedral appeared. It did not rise slowly. 1 second, the family training valley was empty. The next, a black cathedral punched out of the ground so hard that 3 hills rolled over. Bells rang under the earth. Red clouds spiraled above the gate. Every monster within 50 miles ran in the opposite direction, including several that had previously considered humans a snack. The dungeon was measured at SSS rank before the measuring device melted. A voice came from the gate. It said the cathedral wanted a living sacrifice from the bloodline that ruled the valley. One person had to enter alone before sunset. If nobody entered, the dungeon would open and release everything inside. My family held a meeting that lasted 8 minutes. 7 of those minutes were spent pretending the choice was difficult. Graham stared at the floor. Caleb stared at me. Harper stared at Graham. I stared at the plate of fruit in the center of the table and wondered whether taking an apple would make the moment awkward. Graham said my lack of mana gave me the lowest value in battle. Caleb said sacrificing me would protect thousands. Harper said nothing, which hurt more than I expected. Then Graham called it my duty. That was funny. My family had denied me a hunter license, a share of dungeon loot, and even a seat at their main table. But the moment something needed to be eaten alive, I was suddenly a proud son. I took the apple. At sunset, they marched me to the gate in front of hundreds of witnesses. Graham announced that I had volunteered. Caleb placed a hand on my shoulder like a loving brother, but his fingers dug hard enough to bruise. He whispered that I should try not to scream. I whispered that he should try not to blink. Then he shoved me through the gate. The world turned black. My stomach flipped. I fell for what felt like a full minute before landing face first on a carpet that tried to bite me. I punched the carpet punched back. That was my first clue that the dungeon had personality. The second clue was the girl made of blue fire floating above a broken altar. She looked about my age, wore a simple white dress, and had glowing symbols moving through her hair. She watched me wrestle the carpet for several seconds before saying, very calmly, that most sacrifices died with more dignity. I bit the carpet until it released my sleeve. Then I asked who she was. Her name was Lucy. She was the mind of the Devouring Cathedral, or what remained of it. The previous master had died centuries ago. Without a master, the floors had turned wild, the bosses had become violent, and the core had started following its oldest command: find a human successor, or consume everything nearby. My family thought the dungeon demanded food. It had actually demanded an applicant. Lucy explained why the mana crystals had always failed to read me. My channels were not damaged, they were hollow. Normal hunters produced mana from a core inside their bodies. I had no personal core at all. That made ordinary spells impossible, but it also meant there was empty space where something much larger could connect. A dungeon. The altar lit beneath my hand. Black lines raced up my arm and wrapped around my heart. For one terrible second, I felt every wall, stair, trap, monster, flame, and locked door in the cathedral. It was like having a city shoved into my skull. Then the pain stopped. A title burned across the air. Dungeon Sovereign. I expected instant control. Maybe a throne. At least a dramatic coat. Instead, the carpet bit my ankle again. Lucy explained the condition I had missed. The dungeon would accept me only if I conquered it floor by floor. I had to enter each domain, defeat its boss, and claim its core seal with my own hand. Until then, the monsters would treat me like any other intruder. There were 5 floors. The first door opened behind me. I looked into a banquet hall filled with skeletons wearing napkins. At the far end stood a giant chef built from ribs, cleavers, and bad intentions. Green fire burned in its eye sockets. A cooking pot large enough to boil a wagon bubbled beside it. Lucy told me I could still refuse. Behind me, the exit had vanished. I told her I admired her sense of humor. Then the bone chef threw a cleaver the size of a door. I ducked. The cleaver cut through 6 stone pillars and returned to its hand like a spinning moon. The skeleton diners clapped. One of them threw bread at me. I had no sword and no mana of my own, but the Dungeon Sovereign class gave me one beginner ability. I could borrow a tiny amount of power from any room that had not rejected me yet. The banquet hall was undecided. That meant I had 3 minutes before it chose violence permanently. I sprinted between tables while the bone chef launched cleavers. Each blade smashed furniture, cut chains, and opened cracks in the floor. I was not dodging randomly, I was arranging the room. First I let a cleaver cut down the iron chandelier. Second, I kicked 3 tables into a line. Third, I stole a ladle. The bone chef roared and charged. Its ribcage opened like an oven, releasing a river of green flame. I ran up the tilted tables, jumped onto the falling chandelier, and swung directly over the fire. The flames heated the chandelier until every chain glowed orange. Then I dropped. The hot chains wrapped around the bone chef. It tore 2 apart, but I shoved the ladle through its ribs and hooked the chain around the handle. The more it pulled, the tighter the metal twisted. That alone would not kill it. Bosses were not that polite, so I kicked the giant cooking pot. Boiling black soup flooded the floor. The bone chef slipped, crashed onto its own cleaver, and split the stone beneath us. The crack I had been building finally opened. Under the banquet hall was the furnace. The bone chef fell into its own fire. I grabbed the chandelier chain, swung down after it, and landed on its skull while green flames exploded around me. Borrowed dungeon power poured into my empty channels for the first time in my life. It felt cold, heavy, and completely ridiculous. I formed it into my fist. One punch shattered the bone chef's head and blew the furnace doors across the room. The skeleton diners stopped clapping. Then every one of them stood and bowed. The banquet hall accepted me. The floor seal appeared inside the broken cooking pot. When I touched it, the entire room folded into a black key that sank into my palm. The bone chef rebuilt itself from smoke and bone, knelt, and waited for my command. My first permanent guardian was an undead cook with 6 arms and a personal grudge against under-seasoned meat. I had never felt more powerful. I immediately ordered it to make me dinner. Lucy said this was not the intended use of a boss-class guardian. The bone chef produced a steak glowing with enough mana to knock out an elephant. I ate it anyway. My body absorbed dungeon energy instead of rejecting it. Muscle formed across my arms, old scars vanished, my senses sharpened, until I could hear monsters breathing on the floor above us. For the first time, power did not feel like something other people owned, it felt hungry. The second floor was called the Storm Kennel. The moment I entered, rain started falling sideways. Hundreds of iron cages lined a corridor under a ceiling of spinning clouds. Lightning struck every few seconds, and each strike woke another hound made of thunder. At the end of the corridor waited the Thunderhound, a beast as large as a house. Its fur was white electricity, its paws never touched the ground. Each breath turned nearby chains into molten metal. Lucy warned me that it could cross the entire floor in less than a heartbeat. I pointed at the bone chef and asked whether it could cook while running. 6 arms lifted. 6 knives flashed. The answer was yes. I had the bone chef carve monster meat from the first floor into one enormous sausage. The smell spread through the kennel. Every thunderbeast turned its head at once. Then I ran. The bone chef rolled the sausage down the corridor like a log. The smaller hounds chased it. The Thunderhound chased them. I jumped onto an iron serving tray, grabbed 2 cage chains, and let the storm drag me forward like the world's most dangerous sled. Lightning hit the tray. My hair stood up. My teeth rang. The borrowed power in my channels swallowed the strike, but I could only hold it for a few seconds before becoming Ethan-shaped smoke, so I needed somewhere to put it. I threw one chain around the giant sausage and the other around the Thunderhound's neck. The entire pack became one moving circuit. Electricity blasted through every beast, jumped into the sausage, and cooked it instantly. The smell became so powerful that even the boss hesitated. That hesitation cost it. The bone chef leaped from a cage, sliced the sausage into 100 spinning pieces, and flung them in every direction. The smaller hounds scattered after the food. The Thunderhound was left alone, tangled in chains, and very offended. It lunged at me. I opened the black key in my palm. The first floor door appeared in mid-air. The Thunderhound flew through it at full speed, and slammed into the banquet hall. The skeleton diners were ready. They yanked the chandelier chain, swung the boss in a circle, and launched it back through the same door. I met it with the iron serving tray. The tray struck its nose. The stored lightning discharged at once. The explosion erased half the cages and left a hound-shaped hole in the far wall. When the smoke cleared, the Thunderhound crawled out, lowered its head, and placed one crackling paw in front of me. The second seal entered my palm. Now I could summon doors to any floor I owned, even in the outside world. I could also call the Thunderhound beneath my feet and ride it through the air. Lucy called it spatial movement. I called it a lightning skateboard. The third floor tried to make me fall upward. I stepped through the door and dropped toward the ceiling. An upside-down city stretched beneath me. Towers hung from a black sky, streets curled into loops, furniture, rocks and screaming monsters floated through shifting gravity fields. At the center of it all coiled the gravity serpent. It was longer than the family estate, with silver scales and a mouth that could swallow a building. Rings around its body controlled the direction of gravity. Each time a ring spun, the entire city changed orientation. I summoned the Thunderhound and landed on its back. We raced through the air while the serpent snapped at us. Buildings fell sideways, streets folded into walls, a clock tower shot past my ear like an arrow. The obvious plan was to attack the rings. The serpent clearly expected that, because every ring was covered by blade-like scales. So I attacked its appetite. The bone chef cooked another steak, this one wrapped around the first floor door. I threw it into the serpent's open mouth. The beast swallowed both. Then I opened the door. A doorway appeared from the inside of its stomach to the banquet hall. The bone chef and 50 skeleton diners began throwing furniture through. Tables, chairs, pots, plates, and one furious carpet poured into the serpent from a space that should not fit inside it. The serpent swelled like a balloon. Its rings spun out of control. Gravity changed direction 20 times in 5 seconds. I did not fight the force, I surfed it. The thunderhound ran across falling buildings, while I jumped from roof to roof, gaining speed every time the world tilted. When the serpent tried to spit out the door, I recalled it and opened a new one behind its head. I flew through. Borrowed gravity wrapped around my arm. Lightning wrapped around my fist. The bone chef threw me a cleaver. I struck the serpent's largest ring, with all 3 at once. The ring cracked, gravity collapsed inward. The serpent tied itself into a knot so tight that its scales sparked. I landed on its head, grabbed the broken ring, and forced it to spin in reverse. The entire floor slammed down in one direction. The serpent hit the street. I hit the serpent. The city rang like a bell. A silver seal rose from the impact crater and entered my hand. The gravity serpent shrank into a ribbon of black and silver energy, then coiled behind me as my third guardian. I could now change gravity inside any claimed room. Naturally, my first test was making the bone chef cook upside down. It did not affect the food, but it deeply confused the skeleton waiters. By then Lucy had stopped asking whether I took anything seriously. I told her I took survival seriously. Everything else was allowed to be funny. That answer made her smile for the first time. The 4th floor was an ocean hanging above an empty sky. There was no ground, there was only a black void below, and a ceiling made of water above. Islands floated between them like crumbs. Inside the upside-down sea swam the sky leviathan, a whale-shaped monster with wings, horns, and a jaw lined with glowing blue caves. I landed on a floating island. The leviathan opened its mouth. The island vanished. I barely escaped through a door, but half my coat did not. Lucy explained that the boss did not bite matter. It erased the space matter occupied. Anything caught inside its jaw was simply gone. That made direct defense useless. Good thing I had never been good at direct defense. I called the gravity serpent. Its rings spun, pulling a column of water out of the sealing sea. The water fell around us in a twisting tower. I rode the thunderhound up the tower, while the bone chef stood on its head, chopping flying fish into glowing strips. The leviathan charged. I opened 3 doors in a line. The first led to the storm kennel, the second led to the inverted city, the third led back to the ocean floor. The leviathan swallowed the first door. Lightning from the entire kennel entered its mouth. It swallowed the second. Gravity turned sideways inside its body. It swallowed the third. A piece of its own ocean fell into its lungs. The beast coughed so hard that blue caves flew out of its mouth. But it was still an SSS-rank floor boss. Its wings unfolded across the sky, and thousands of water spears formed around me. Each spear carried that same space-erasing bite. There was nowhere to dodge, so I moved the room. I had claimed 3 floors, and each floor could be called through a door. I opened the banquet hall around myself like a box. Water spears hit tables, walls, and the angry carpet. Before the hall could be erased, I flipped gravity. Every spear turned and fell back through the open doorway. The sky leviathan took its own attack across the wings. I jumped from the banquet chandelier, rode the thunderhound through a storm of falling water, and reached the monster's forehead. The bone chef tossed me a skewer, made from one of the serpent's broken scales. I drove it between the leviathan's horns. Then I opened the storm kennel at one end of the skewer, and the ocean at the other. Lightning entered. Water carried it. Gravity compressed it. The blast turned the entire sky white. When my vision returned, the leviathan floated quietly beneath me. Its vast eye opened. It did not look angry anymore. It looked impressed. The 4th seal sank into my hand. A tiny version of the sky leviathan began swimming in a ring of water around my shoulders. When summoned at full size, it could cross the sky in seconds, swallow attacks, and carry entire buildings inside bubbles. I asked Lucy whether it could carry my family estate. She asked why. I said I had decorating ideas. Only 1 floor remained. The deepest level was called the Master's Grave. Lucy became quiet when the door opened. Beyond it lay a field of black swords under a red sun. At the center stood a dragon chained to a stone throne. It had 6 wings, no eyes, and a furnace burning inside its chest. The abyss dragon had killed the previous master. It had spent centuries waiting for the next one. The chains broke before I crossed the threshold. Its roar did not make sound. It deleted sound. The world went silent. My doors vanished. The guardians behind me flickered. The dragon's first breath turned the ground into glass. This boss was built to fight a dungeon sovereign. It could sever my connection to every claimed floor. For the first time since entering the cathedral, I was alone. The dragon moved faster than the thunderhound. 1 claw cut across my chest and threw me through a forest of swords. My borrowed power leaked from the wound in black sparks. The second claw crushed the ground where my head had been. I rolled, grabbed a sword and swung. The blade melted against its scales. The dragon's tail hit me. I flew so far that the red sun became small. I landed in a crater with 3 broken ribs, and a terrible realization. All my clever tricks depended on doors. The dragon knew that. Lucy's voice could barely reach me through the severed connection. She said I could retreat, the 4 seals would remain mine, we could wait, recover, and try again later. I looked at the dragon walking toward me, then I looked at the black swords covering the field. Every sword pointed toward the throne. That was strange. Weapons dropped in battle usually fell randomly. These had been planted, thousands of them, all facing one place. The previous master had not left me a weapon, he had left me a map. I ran toward the throne. The dragon chased me, tearing trenches through the field. I let it get close, too close. Its breath burned my back, its claws cut my shoulder. I kept running until I reached the throne and placed my hand on the stone. Nothing happened. The dragon opened its furnace, then I sat down. The entire floor recognized the position. The swords rose, not because I had claimed the floor. I had not. They rose because the master's grave had one fixed rule. Whoever sat on the throne became the target of every weapon. The previous master had used the throne as a command seat. I used it as bait. Thousands of black swords turned toward me. The dragon stood directly between us. I smiled. The dragon understood 1 second too late. I jumped. Every sword fired. The sky became black metal. Blades struck the dragon from every direction, pinning its wings, legs and tail. It roared without sound, and released a wave that shattered half of them, but I was already falling above its chest. I had no door. I had no guardian. I had no weapon that could pierce its scales, so I used the one thing the dragon could not sever, my empty channels. I opened them completely. The unclaimed 5th floor poured into me. Pain burned through every nerve. The red sun dimmed, the stone throne cracked, the dragon's furnace pulled against the power, trying to consume it, but my body had spent 19 years holding nothing. Nothing had made room. I took more, and more. Black light wrapped around me until I looked like a falling star. Then I drove my bare hand into the furnace in the dragon's chest. The fire tried to erase me. I grabbed the 5th seal inside it. The seal fought like a living heart. I squeezed until it cracked. The explosion split the red sun. When silence returned, I was standing inside a crater that reached from the throne to the horizon. The dragon lay beneath me with smoke rising from its wings. Its furnace went dark. Then one ember returned. The abyss dragon lowered its head. The 5th seal entered my palm, and all 5 floors connected at once. The banquet hall, the storm kennel, the inverted city, the sky ocean, and the field of swords folded together inside me. Every monster bowed, every trap waited, every doorway became mine. The devouring cathedral had a master again. Lucy descended beside me, no longer flickering. The blue fire in her body had become bright enough to cast shadows across the whole floor. She said the dungeon was stable, the gate outside had closed, the valley was safe. My family would think the sacrifice worked. They would think I died. That would have been the perfect time to leave quietly, grow stronger, and plan for years. So naturally, I returned the next morning. I opened a door in the middle of breakfast. Caleb sprayed tea across the table. Graham stood so fast that his chair broke. Harper's thread snapped out around her fingers. Every guard in the room reached for a weapon. I stepped through wearing a torn coat, carrying the bone chef's smallest knife, and chewing the last piece of glowing steak. Nobody spoke. I placed the bitten apple from the sacrifice ceremony on Caleb's plate. Then I asked where my lilies were. His face matched them perfectly. Caleb recovered first. He formed a needle of sunlight under the table and fired it at my heart. I moved my cup 2 inches. A doorway the size of a coin opened inside the tea. The needle entered, crossed the banquet hall, toasted a slice of bread, and returned beneath Caleb's chair. His cushion caught fire. He jumped up screaming while I drank the tea. Everyone blamed a mana accident. That told me something important. Powerful hunters could watch an attack reverse direction and still reject the obvious answer if the answer hurt their pride. Graham questioned me for hours. I said the sacrifice altar had broken, and I had crawled through a passage until I found daylight. It was a terrible lie, but he accepted it, because the alternative was admitting that the son he discarded had done something he could not understand. Harper did not accept it. She watched my hands, my new muscles, and the shadows that sometimes bent into doorframes near me. But she stayed quiet again. The family succession tournament was 10 days away. Caleb was supposed to win, inherit control of the family's dungeon network, and become the next head. Graham had already arranged the matches to make him look unstoppable. I entered my name. The registration crystal showed 0 mana and made a sad noise. The room laughed for nearly a minute. Graham approved my entry because he wanted Caleb to humiliate me in front of every important hunter in the country. I especially liked the part where they gathered all the witnesses for me. Before the tournament, Graham sent me to carry supplies into an F-rank gate beneath an abandoned shopping center. Lucy felt the core from 3 miles away. It was A-rank. The cleanup team did not exist, and 6 family hunters followed me through the gate with hidden weapons. I pretended not to notice. The dungeon looked like a children's playground built by an angry machine. Brass slides twisted through the ceiling, metal animals flew between platforms, and saw blades popped from the floor in time with cheerful music. At the center, a clockwork gorilla hammered a tower of gears. Each rhythm changed the entire room. The 6 hunters waited until the entrance closed, demanded anything I had brought back from the cathedral, and attacked before I finished telling them I only had trauma and an apple. That was exactly what I needed. The first attacker rushed through a black door and landed in the banquet hall. The bone chef caught him by the collar and placed him inside a soup bowl. The second fired a wind blade. I sent it through the storm kennel. It returned wrapped in lightning and cut every belt in the room. 5 sets of pants fell at once. Even the clockwork gorilla paused. The hunters tried to surround me while holding up their clothes. I called the thunderhound beneath my feet, raced up a brass slide, and flipped gravity. Springs, platforms, metal ducts, and 6 furious attackers flew toward the wall. The sky leviathan caught them in separate water bubbles and stacked them like grapes. Nobody died. Their dignity did not survive. Then I turned to the boss. To absorb a dungeon core, I had to conquer its controlling floor personally, so instead of crushing the gorilla with my dragon, I challenged it to a rhythm battle. It beat the gear tower. I beat 6 cooking pans while riding the thunderhound around the ceiling. The fight became ridiculous immediately. The gorilla launched brass horses with one pattern, and turned slides into cannons with another. I opened doors under the horses, dropped them from the sky, redirected the cannons into the tower, and had the gravity serpent spin the room like a carnival ride. The captured hunters screamed from their bubbles. I told them admission was free. At last the gorilla activated every trap at once. I listened to its rhythm, and heard the tiny pause after the 4th strike. During that pause, I rode a spring over the saws and drove the bone chef's knife into the smallest gear at the tower's base. The gear stopped. Everything else kept moving. The tower tore itself apart and buried the gorilla in brass. I landed on its head, tapped the final beat against its skull, and locked the whole dungeon in place. The A-rank core rose as a golden music box. I absorbed it. The playground became my 6th floor. The clockwork gorilla became a guardian, and I gained the power to rearrange walls, platforms, seats and stages inside my territory. That was going to be useful in an arena. The captured hunters admitted Graham had sent them to kill me and recover any relic I carried. Lucy stored their words inside the core. Then the bone chef put them in comfortable cells and served soup so spicy that one confessed to crimes I had not asked about. When I returned alone, Graham looked behind me for the missing team. I told him the F-rank dungeon had been exciting. His eye twitched. That night, Harper sent razor threads beneath my door, around the windows, and across the ceiling. She tightened them all at once. I opened 12 tiny doors. The threads crossed the clockwork playground, looped around moving gears, and returned tied into a perfect bow around her wrists. Harper finally understood that the boy thrown into the cathedral had not come back. She asked what I wanted. I said I wanted Caleb to attack me in the final match. I wanted Graham to think he still controlled the arena. I wanted every hidden blade in the family to swing where the whole world could see it. She warned me they would destroy the arena rather than lose. I told her that was why I had chosen it. 3 days later, 50,000 people filled the family stadium. Floating screens showed every angle. Beneath the white fighting floor, I felt sealed tunnels and a stolen core pulsing like a buried heart. Graham had built the arena above a captured S-rank dungeon, and drained it for years. The core powered the family's weapons and bloodline rituals. Deep below the seats, monsters and missing hunters were chained around it as living fuel. Lucy felt their pain. I stopped smiling for almost 5 seconds. The first round was an obstacle race across collapsing towers, fire rings and flying stone discs. Every competitor exploded forward with glowing movement skills. I walked. The crowd laughed until a tower fell toward me and I changed its gravity into a bridge. I opened coin-sized doors to pour rain through the fire rings. When a stone disc tried to knock me off the course, the angry carpet reached through a doorway, bit it, and refused to let go. At the final gap, the thunderhound appeared beneath 1 foot. I crossed the stadium on a line of lightning, landed first, and asked whether walking still counted. The crowd stopped laughing. In the next round, 7 hunters agreed to attack me together. I leaned against a crystal pillar and asked whether they wanted a countdown. They charged. The clockwork playground shifted one section of the arena 6 feet left. Their attacks missed me and hit one another. I opened the storm kennel overhead, let sideways rain cover the floor, and sent the thunderhound around them in a glowing circle. 7 people crossed the lightning line. 7 people dropped with round hair and smoking shoes. I never stopped leaning against the pillar. Then I faced Harper. Her threads filled the arena with lines too thin to see. She did not attack directly. She divided the field into smaller and smaller spaces, cutting every shadow before I could form a door. 1 thread opened my cheek. Hundreds locked around my arms. For the first time since returning, I had to stop showing off and think. Harper knew how I moved. She did not know where I owned. I let her push me to the edge. Then I used her threads as handles. The clockwork playground raised every floor tile into a spinning platform. Her web was tied across all of them. The platforms turned. Her own threads lifted her, wrapped around the crystal pillars, and wove a giant silver cage. I opened a doorway beneath it, dropped in a banquet chair, and let a skeleton waiter serve her tea. 1 thread remained around my throat. She loosened it. I won. As I left, I told her silence was also a choice. Then came Caleb. He entered surrounded by rings of sunlight, with golden blades floating behind him like wings. I carried the bone chef's little kitchen knife. He fired 100 light blades before the match announcement ended. I opened 100 tiny doors. Each blade crossed the banquet kitchen, and returned wrapped around a noodle. Caleb's ultimate attack became lunch. The noodles slapped him from every direction, while a skeleton waiter offered him a fork. He answered with a solar wave large enough to melt the arena wall. The sky leviathan swallowed it, and spat it into the sky, where it burst into the shape of a giant smiling fish. That part was not necessary. I did it because I could. Caleb rose into the air, and formed a spear of condensed sunlight. At the same moment, Graham activated the suppression formation beneath the arena. Every hunter in the stadium lost access to mana. Caleb's spear remained. Graham expected me to collapse. I had no personal mana to suppress. My doors opened wider. The banquet hall appeared behind me. The storm kennel stretched above. The inverted city unfolded beneath the transparent floor. An ocean rolled across the ceiling, and black swords rose in the distance. Caleb threw the solar spear. I caught it with one hand. Dungeon energy wrapped the light around my arm like ribbon. I spun and threw it beside him, close enough to burn away one eyebrow. I wanted him angry because an angry Caleb was honest. He shouted that I should have died in the cathedral. Graham ordered him to finish the sacrifice they had started. Every crystal carried their voices to the crowd. Graham panicked and signaled his hidden enforcers. Dozens rose from the audience and attacked me across the spectator seats. Their spells endangered thousands, just to protect one family's pride. I had chosen the arena because I knew they would attack first. Black doors opened beneath every enforcer. They fell into cells on my first floor, and the bone chef rang a dinner bell behind them. Then I pressed my palm to the arena. White stone turned black. Banquet tables burst from the ground. Crystal pillars stretched into cathedral columns. The spectator seats rose safely onto floating balconies. A red carpet rolled across the fighting circle and bit Caleb's shoe. The succession tournament arena became the first floor of my dungeon. Everyone who had laughed at me was standing inside my territory. The bone chef rose behind me with 6 burning cleavers. The thunderhound circled the roof in lightning. The gravity serpent coiled through the columns. The sky leviathan swam across the ocean ceiling. The abyss dragon landed above Graham. The clockwork gorilla took over the match bell and rang it hard enough to crack the announcer booth. Caleb dropped his remaining blades. Graham tore open the floor and seized the stolen S-rank core. The hidden chamber rose into view. 50,000 people saw the chains, the wounded hunters, the drained monsters, and the machine feeding stolen power into my family. Harper cut the chains. I opened the sky ocean beneath the prisoners and carried them into the floating balconies inside soft bubbles. Skeleton waiters brought healing food, while the bone chef guarded them. Graham absorbed years of stolen power at once. His skin became transparent. White fire spread into wings behind him, and a burning serpent twisted inside his chest. For a few minutes, he reached something close to SSS rank. He pointed one hand at the spectators and formed an artificial sun above the arena. That was the moment I stopped playing. The gravity serpent compressed the sun. The sky leviathan swallowed the escaping heat. The thunderhound wrapped it in lightning. The bone chef seasoned it. Lucy asked why. Presentation mattered. The abyss dragon inhaled, and Graham's artificial sun shrank into a glowing marble in my palm. I walked toward him on black stairs forming in the air. He fired beams, flame blades, and waves of stolen mana. I placed doors in their paths. One beam watered flowers in the banquet hall. One blade sliced the bone chef's vegetables. One wave entered the storm kennel and returned as rain. Graham had spent his life believing power meant hitting harder. When harder stopped working, he had nothing left. I held out the glowing marble. He lunged for it. I opened a door behind myself. Graham followed me into the master's grave, beneath the cracked red sun and the thousands of black swords. I did not need a hidden trick. I only needed him away from the crowd, and angry enough to chase me. I ran toward the throne. He threw a spear of white fire. I tilted the floor. The spear missed, and struck the throne. Every sword turned toward the brightest target on the field. Graham. The first wave shattered his fire shield. The second cut away his wings. The third pinned his shadow to the ground. He tore free and charged me, shouting that I was still the weakest son. I caught his fist. The floor cracked beneath us. He finally understood what no mana crystal could measure. I was not borrowing strength anymore. The dungeon and I had grown together. I squeezed. The stolen core broke inside him. I pulled the escaping power into my hollow channels before it could destroy his body, then threw him through a door back into the arena. He landed at Caleb's feet with no fire, no wings, and no stolen power. The whole country saw him fall. The authorities found the captured attackers alive, the rescued hunters safe, and the memories Lucy had stored inside the dungeon core. Graham and Caleb were placed in containment wagons. Caleb tried to run. The angry carpet caught him, dragged him across every floating screen, and delivered him to the wagon. The bone chef packed him lunch for jail. Harper remained in the arena. She had helped free the prisoners, but she had also watched my sacrifice, and chosen silence. I did not forgive her. I gave her a chance to decide what she would become next. The tournament ended without a winner. The elders complained that the rules had been broken, mostly because the arena was now a haunted banquet hall, and the favorite had been arrested by a carpet. I dropped the family crest into the bone chef's pot, and turned it into soup. I did not need their title. I owned 6 floors, 6 boss guardians, an SSS-rank dragon, a moving ocean, a city with adjustable gravity, and a chef that could cook sunlight. Their chair at the head of a table seemed small. By sunset, the rescued hunters were safe. The imprisoned monsters had new habitats inside my territory. The arena remained transformed, not as a prison, but as my front gate. People who once mocked my empty mana channels lined up outside to ask for training, shelter, or help clearing dangerous dungeons. I accepted the ones who protected weaker people. The arrogant ones went through a hallway where the carpet judged their manners. The carpet was strict. Caleb had wanted to inherit the country's strongest hunter family. I became something larger than a family. Graham had believed a dungeon only consumed people. I made mine protect them. For the first time in centuries, the devouring cathedral stopped feeling hungry. Lucy stood beside me on the highest balcony of the inverted city. The sky leviathan swam beneath our feet, the thunderhound raced between towers, and the bone chef tried to teach the clockwork gorilla to flip pancakes with a gear. It was going badly. Then Lucy looked toward the horizon. A pulse moved through the dungeon network. Somewhere beyond the valley, another core was traveling beneath the earth, consuming smaller dungeons as it moved. It had been active for years. My expanded territory finally let me feel its direction. It was coming toward the city. A black gate appeared in the sky as the wandering dungeon reached its next feeding ground. Something enormous knocked from the other side. Once, twice. On the third knock, the abyss dragon raised its head. I opened every door in my territory. Lightning filled the streets. Gravity twisted the clouds into a spiral. The ocean began to fall upward. 6 guardians waited behind me, and 50,000 people looked to the useless sun they had expected to die. I rolled the bone chef's knife across my fingers and smiled. My family had fed me to an SSS-rank dungeon to get rid of me. Instead, the dungeon had made their arena my first floor. Now something on the other side of the world had knocked on my front door, and I was finally strong enough to answer.